They were the embodiment of black excellence. Kwame Jones, a respected mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart full of ambition, and Latrenda Hill Jones, a radiant nurse whose warm smile could calm even the most distressed patient. In their small Georgia town, they were more than just a couple. They were a symbol of love done right. Sunday churchgoers, neighborhood mentors, and parents of three beautiful children, the Joneses were everything a family was supposed to be. But behind closed doors, beneath the praise and prayers, something sinister was brewing. It wasn't infidelity. It wasn't money trouble. No, the secret festering in their marriage was darker than anyone could have imagined, something so monstrous, so unfathomable, it would stop the nation in its tracks and leave a trail of disbelief in its wake. Because sometimes, the greatest evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes, it sleeps beside you. How does a marriage built on faith and family values descend into unspeakable horror? What if the person you vowed to spend forever with was hiding a darkness you could never prepare for? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the terrifying truth that love, when poisoned by secrets, can become the deadliest weapon of all. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping true crime case, like this video and subscribe for more shocking stories of deception, love gone wrong, and chilling betrayals you won't believe. To the outside world, Latrenda Felecia Tiller was nothing short of a miracle in Scrubs. Born and raised in the heart of Gary, Indiana, she came from humble beginnings. Her mother was a lunch lady, her father a sanitation worker. But Latrenda had big dreams and the determination to match. By 26, she had graduated top of her class from Indiana University Northwest's nursing program and immediately landed a job at St. Arlene's Medical Center, one of the city's busiest hospitals. Within 5 years, she'd built a reputation as a trusted, even-tempered professional who could handle anything from a code blue to delivering premature babies with the grace of a seasoned surgeon. Her coworkers called her the Pulse because when she was on the floor, everything ran smooth. Her social media told the rest of the story. She curated her life online like a virtual ministry, posting videos of herself singing gospel tunes in the kitchen while cooking smothered pork chops and greens, sharing slow-motion clips of her children opening gifts on Christmas morning, or standing before her congregation in a white skirt suit, leading women's Bible study. Her captions always had a purpose. God didn't bring me this far to leave me, or submission is not weakness, it's wisdom. To her thousands of followers, she wasn't just a nurse or a mother. She was a beacon of hope. A woman who had done it right and never let the world harden her. Enter Kwame Tiller, stoic, quiet, and fiercely loyal. Where Latrenda had the light, Kwame was the calm in the storm. Raised by his grandfather in a shotgun house off 19th and Broadway, Kwame didn't finish college, but he didn't need to. He was a self-taught mechanic with grease-stained hands and a reputation for honesty that stretched from Merrillville to East Chicago. His shop, Tiller's Auto and Diagnostics, wasn't fancy, but it stayed busy. People trusted him. He didn't upsell. He gave people fair prices, free advice, and sometimes loaner cars when they couldn't afford a rental. To many, he was a dying breed, an honorable black man who worked hard, kept his head down, and loved his family loud. Their story began on a chilly October afternoon during a church fundraiser for single mothers. Latrenda had come to donate diapers. Kwame had come to fix the church van's transmission. They locked eyes over punch and chicken salad sandwiches, and from that day forward, their bond was undeniable. Kwame was drawn to her grace. Latrenda was drawn to his steadiness. Within 6 months, they were courting the old-fashioned way. No sex before marriage, no sleepovers, just phone calls, church dates, and family dinners. People whispered they were rushing it, but neither of them cared. Their wedding, held at New Mercy Temple Church, was a spectacle of praise and tears. The sanctuary was filled with white roses, doves were released after the final prayer, and a local gospel quartet sang as they shared their first dance in front of 150 guests. Latrenda wore ivory lace, Kwame, a custom gray suit with her rock embroidered on the cuff. Their vows were streamed live on Facebook, where over 12,000 people tuned in. It was the kind of wedding people screenshotted for inspiration. After the ceremony, they moved into a modest three-bedroom ranch house in Black Oak with a fenced-in yard and a swing set for the kids. Latrenda brought 3 children from a previous relationship, twin boys, Messiah and Mackay, and a baby girl named Heaven. Kwame, though not their biological father, embraced them fully. He attended parent-teacher conferences, coached their little league teams, and read bedtime stories every night. He was, in every way that mattered, their dad. Together, Latrenda and Kwame became local legends. The nurse and the mechanic. The God-fearing couple who volunteered at soup kitchens, organized back-to-school drives, and taught young couples about the importance of faith and fidelity. People reposted their photos like they were vision boards. Strangers asked them for relationship advice. Young women idolized Latrenda, men respected Kwame. They were more than a couple. They were a brand. Black excellence personified. And no one, could have imagined the darkness that lurked just beneath their well-polished surface. Behind Latrenda Tiller's holy glow and pristine white scrubs was a secret so vile, it defied comprehension. While her co-workers at St. Arlene's saw her as a tireless healer, and the community praised her as a beacon of maternal strength, Latrenda was operating a black market empire built on the backs of the most vulnerable. For nearly 6 years, she had been living a double life. Angel by day, predator by night. It all began with a single decision, one she later justified in her personal journal as an act of mercy. A newborn baby had been abandoned by a schizophrenic mother in the ER hours after delivery. The woman had no ID, no family, and wandered off before child services could arrive. Latrenda claimed she was led by the Holy Spirit to place that baby in the arms of a wealthy couple from Vancouver who had flown into O'Hare under the guise of a fertility consultation. That baby was sold for $200,000. And with that one transaction, a monster was born. Using the alias Nurse Petal 88, Latrenda became a key player in a dark web marketplace called Cradle Exchange, a digital clearinghouse for baby trafficking. The site catered to international clients, mostly high-net-worth individuals from Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, who wanted infants without the bureaucracy of legal adoption or the waiting period of fertility clinics. She used her access at St. Arlene's to flag vulnerable births. Infants born to addicted mothers, sex workers, undocumented migrants, or women whose mental state rendered them legally incompetent to care for a child. She would approach these mothers with soothing tones and carefully crafted lies, promising Christian adoption, open visitation, and homes with stable 2-parent families. What the women didn't know was that they were signing forged paperwork, sometimes doped up on pain meds, sometimes unable to read English, that severed their rights forever. Within hours, the babies would disappear into Latrenda's network, placed in unmarked vehicles, sometimes transferred through church basements or back-alley clinics before reaching their final destinations. The profits were staggering. One black baby girl with light eyes and no prenatal complications fetched $400,000. A biracial boy born to a Cuban sex worker and a white trucker earned $320,000. Babies with Down syndrome or physical deformities were often labeled unsuitable in her ledgers, code for disposable. Several of those children were never handed off at all. Instead, they were found years later in the most horrifying place imaginable, wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic and hidden inside a deep freezer in the Tiller's garage, beneath bags of frozen peas and family-sized lasagna trays. The meticulous records were hidden in a hollowed-out Bible that sat untouched on her nightstand. Inside it were columns of data, baby names, birth weights, ethnic markers, dates, transaction codes, and delivery routes. She kept a detailed key of client preferences, including one note that read, "Client prefers infants under 5 pounds. Avoid dark skin tones." She funneled the money, often received in cryptocurrency or high-value gift cards, through beauty supply stores registered in the names of distant cousins or elderly church members who had no idea their social security numbers were being used. She opened one such business 2 blocks from the hospital, a shell storefront with dusty wigs and empty shampoo bottles, used primarily to deposit and move money without detection. But it wasn't just about greed. In her twisted mind, Latrenda believed she was acting out a divine purpose. In prayer journals and private voicemails recovered later, she claimed she was doing God's work, giving these discarded souls a chance at life that the world had denied them. She told herself the ends justified the means. And as long as she tithed regularly, fed the homeless, and kept her children enrolled in Christian schools, the scales remained balanced. Until Kwame started asking questions. He wasn't nosy by nature, but he was observant. He began to notice strange things. Designer handbags Latrenda claimed were discounted, random mission trips to Chicago that never involved the church, and luxury strollers that arrived at the house only to be boxed up and shipped out the next day. Her hospital shifts became more erratic. Her eyes stayed fixed on her phone. Sometimes she would come home smelling like perfume, other times like antiseptic and sweat, her face drawn, her hands shaking. At first, Kwame chalked it up to stress. Nursing was demanding. Life was expensive. But one night, he opened a drawer looking for batteries and found a stack of SIM cards, a burner phone, and a ledger written in codes he didn't understand. When he confronted her, she brushed him off with a half-smile and a scripture. "God knows the truth," she said, and kissed his forehead. But Kwame's suspicion had been awakened. And once the lie had a crack, it wouldn't be long before everything shattered. It was a warm spring afternoon, the kind that usually brought peace, birds chirping, lawns being trimmed, neighbors laughing over barbecue smoke. But inside the modest Tiller home on Buchanan Street, something unspeakable was about to unfold. Kwame had just finished changing the oil in a neighbor's car and sent one of their twin sons, Messiah, into the garage for popsicles. A simple, innocent errand. What returned was not a boy holding icy treats, but a trembling child with wide eyes and a scream that would haunt Kwame for the rest of his life. "Daddy, there's a baby in the ice." Kwame blinked, confused. "What? A baby? In the freezer?" "I saw its face." Thinking his son was playing a sick joke or misinterpreting something, a toy, a doll, Kwame stormed into the garage with the casual confidence of a man about to prove a child wrong. But when he flung the freezer open, the breath left his body. Inside, nestled between frozen casseroles and popsicle boxes, were 4 industrial-grade freezer bags. Each bag was vacuum-sealed, each one wrapped in sterile white linens, each one unmistakably shaped like a baby. He dropped to his knees. The room spun. One of the bags had a date scribbled in marker. Another had a name, Baby Jace, 5 pounds 1 ounce. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, fumbling the numbers, stuttering through his words to the 911 operator. There's babies in my freezer," he cried. "Oh my God, there's dead babies in my freezer." The sirens were deafening as they screamed down the street minutes later. Officers rushed in, guns drawn, expecting a hostage situation. What they found was far worse. The forensic team carefully removed the bags from the freezer, laying them out on the driveway like discarded evidence in a war zone. Neighbors gathered, clutching their mouths, some weeping, some recording with their phones in stunned silence. A pastor from down the block dropped to his knees and began praying aloud. Inside the home, a search revealed burner phones, ledgers, and encrypted tablets. On a USB drive found inside a hollow hairbrush were hundreds of files, contracts, client records, baby photos, payment confirmations. The name Nurse Petal 88 appeared again and again. The illusion of the perfect Christian nurse had evaporated in a cloud of death. When Latrenda pulled into the driveway, still wearing her pink scrubs and humming gospel under her breath, she slowed at the sight of the squad cars and yellow tape. She didn't ask questions. She didn't resist. She stepped out of her car, placed her purse gently on the ground, and turned around. Her hands moved behind her back before the officer even gave the command. There was no fight, no tears, just silence, as if she'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. But it was Kwame who unraveled in front of the world. He was sitting on the curb, shaking uncontrollably, whispering, "No, no, not Trenda, not my wife. Officers tried to comfort him, but he shoved them away. How the hell could she do this? In our house? With our kids? He looked up at the woman he had loved for over a decade, the woman he kissed goodnight, the woman who led their dinner prayers, and all he could see now was a stranger. A monster. The image of the babies in the freezer was burned into his memory. His mind spiraled back through the years, those late-night shifts, those expensive trips, the distant look in her eyes when he'd ask simple questions. And he realized something so horrifying it made him gag. He had slept inches away from a killer. As she was led away in cuffs, Latrenda turned to him with a faint smile, an almost angelic serenity. "They're in a better place," she whispered. Kwame collapsed. And just like that, the fairy tale ended. Not with divorce, not with betrayal, but with a freezer full of bodies and a secret so cold it would chill the entire nation to the bone. The news rippled across the country like a detonation. "Nurse from hell," "The cradle butcher," "Mother of ice" headlines screamed from every screen. Photos of Latrenda smiling in scrubs, holding newborns and posting Bible quotes, now flickered beneath the words baby trafficking, freezer corpses, $11 million empire. Within 72 hours, St. Arlene's Medical Center released a public statement disavowing her. The state launched an emergency audit, and a full-scale federal investigation kicked into gear. Agents unearthed the true scope of Latrenda's operation. 17 infants trafficked in 6 years. 4 confirmed dead in the freezer, a 5th reportedly deceased during transport, cremated at a suburban pet facility under the alias Tiny. Most of the children had been born to women who never followed up, women living in shadows, undocumented workers, addicts, unhoused mothers, mentally unstable patients, women whom no one would believe or even miss. Digital forensics revealed an underworld built on cold precision. Crypto wallets showed $11.3 million in clean transactions, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero. But that was just the surface. Investigators followed the money trail deeper, discovering another $12 million laundered through an elaborate network of shell companies, fake real estate investments, and even a supposed Christian fertility fund that funneled dirty money through church-affiliated donors. One LLC was registered to a vacant building. Another under her niece's name, who thought it was just a family business. But while the world screamed for justice, inside the Tiller household, everything disintegrated. Kwame was a shattered man. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He wept through police interviews, unable to grasp how the woman he called his miracle had turned their home into a mausoleum. He blamed himself. Every time he brushed off her excuses, every odd purchase he dismissed, every trip he'd never questioned. His sense of reality buckled under the weight of it. 3 days after the arrest, Child Protective Services came to take the kids. The youngest screamed. The twins refused to look him in the eye. "You should have known," they whispered, packing their things. And then they were gone, leaving only echoes in the hallway and tiny fingerprints on the walls. The house became a tomb. Neighbors stopped speaking. Journalists lined the sidewalk day and night, thrusting microphones into Kwame's face when he stepped outside for air. Protesters gathered, demanding justice. Others came to pray. Some wept. Some cursed. The same church that once praised their love now held vigils for the lost little angels found in the freezer. Even there, the congregation split. Some said Latrenda had been consumed by evil. Others whispered she had snapped under the pressure of a broken system, trying to save babies the world had already discarded. None of it mattered to Kwame. Not anymore. He attempted suicide less than a month after her arrest, once in the garage with the car running, again with pills in a motel bathroom. Both times, he was found in time. Both times, he cursed God for not letting him go. Therapy didn't help. Nothing did. Eventually, with no kids, no wife, and no will to stay in Gary, he vanished. Moved to Ohio. Changed his name. And when a reporter tracked him down for an interview, he simply said, "She killed everything I loved. There's nothing left to say." And with that, the man who once stood beside his wife in matching church attire disappeared from public view forever. But the story was far from over. The firestorm ignited with a fury no one could contain. Within hours of the freezer discovery, Latrenda Felecia Tiller's mugshot was everywhere, plastered across cable news tickers, on YouTube thumbnails, and viral TikToks dissecting her entire life. Her once-adored Instagram posts, Bible verses over boomerangs of baked mac and cheese, videos of her singing gospel while folding baby clothes, were now weaponized in the court of public opinion. Side-by-side comparisons emerged: Sunday saint, weekday butcher. The internet feasted on the hypocrisy. Comment sections grew venomous. Lock her under the jail. Worse than a serial killer. She used God as camouflage. Others took a more complex view. She didn't invent the demand, she just fed it. Influencers made explainer threads on the dark web's black market baby trade. One podcast even titled its special episode St. Arlene's Angel of Death. The memes were ruthless. One showed her holding a baby with the caption, slightly used, DM for price. Another read, Jesus wept, then called the cops. But amid the mockery, deeper conversations took hold. National outlets booked panels of sociologists, ethicists, and former foster care workers. They debated the commodification of black and brown babies, the flaws in hospital discharge oversight, the systemic erasure of mothers society had failed. Some framed Latrenda as the twisted product of a broken infrastructure, someone who witnessed so many discarded lives that she began to see herself as the arbiter of value. And then came the recordings. The burner phone was found inside a floor vent in the master bathroom, wrapped in latex gloves and hidden beneath a loose tile. On it were hundreds. Logical precision, fear, triumph, justification, guilt. But the one that chilled even hardened detectives was labeled "They Deserve Better." In it, Latrenda's voice was steady, almost maternal. "They were born to be discarded," she whispered. "No names. No futures. Their own mothers couldn't look them in the eye. I saved them. I gave them worth. Maybe I'll go to hell, but I saved them first." Her words weren't panicked or regretful. They carried conviction, belief, as if she truly saw herself as a redeemer, not a villain, a martyr of her own making. The public reaction splintered. Some insisted she was a cold-blooded trafficker who exploited the vulnerable for personal gain. Others asked harder questions. What kind of world lets children be born into such voids that a woman like Latrenda could see herself as their last hope? Psychologists weighed in. Terms like moral disengagement, God complex, and compartmentalized empathy surfaced in articles. Could she have loved her own children while storing others like meat? Could a woman who prayed before bed, who wept at baptisms, really sell newborns as inventory? The debate turned vicious. Online comment wars erupted between "she's evil" and "she's broken." A few fringe voices even called for clemency, arguing she exposed a hole in the system no one wanted to talk about. But for most, the answer was simple. No amount of childhood trauma or systemic injustice could excuse vacuum-sealed corpses and crypto profits. Latrenda became more than a woman. She became a symbol. A Rorschach test of everything people feared about modern motherhood, religion, race, money, and morality. And as the world dissected her life, her crimes, and her twisted rationalizations, the woman at the center of the storm sat in a 6x9 cell, staring at a wall, still convinced she had done something holy. The courtroom was electric with tension the moment Latrenda chose to represent herself. Dressed in a modest beige suit and clutching a worn Bible, she stood before the jury not as a criminal, but as a woman who still believed in her divine mission. She cited Jeremiah 1 verse 5, "Before I formed thee in the belly I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb I sanctified thee," twisting it to suggest she was chosen to guide forgotten souls. At another point, she referenced Proverbs 31 verse 8, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed," as if her crimes were acts of mercy. Prosecutors dismantled her defense with surgical precision. They presented digital trails, financial statements, and testimony from mothers who had been manipulated into surrendering their infants. One woman broke down on the stand, revealing how Latrenda convinced her the baby would die in foster care if she didn't act fast. Forensic accountants traced over $23 million in illegal income. Trauma experts described her behavior as rationalized psychopathy. There was no insanity plea. no delusions. Only meticulous planning cloaked in false piety. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The conviction was sweeping. 61 felony counts, from human trafficking to abuse of a corpse. When sentencing came, the judge didn't mince words. He called her a devourer of innocence and a manipulator of God's word for grotesque personal gain. She received 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Latrenda's final words to the court were chilling in their calm. God knows my heart. I did what I thought was right. She never shed a tear. Not when the verdict was read. Not when the mothers wailed. Not when the gavel fell. Just a slight nod, as if she were being called home, not to prison, but to purpose. This case left a scar not only on the community of Gary, Indiana, but on the collective conscience of anyone who ever believed evil had a distinct face. Latrenda Tiller was not a shadowy figure lurking in alleyways. She was a nurse, a mother, a wife, a woman of God. And that's what made her actions so horrifying. She didn't just break the law, she shattered the illusion of safety that came from trust, family, and faith. The contrast is what haunts us. She cooked Sunday dinners and led prayer circles while storing dead infants in her freezer. She quoted scripture as she forged adoption papers and convinced broken women to hand over their children. The duality wasn't just shocking, it was surgical, calculated, cold. Kwame's face, etched with betrayal, told a story no headline could capture. He loved her, he believed her, and still, he lived with corpses buried beneath their domestic routine. What do we do when the evil we fear isn't a stranger, but someone we kiss goodnight? We're left with hard questions. Could better oversight in hospitals have saved those children? Could a more humane system for struggling mothers have prevented their desperation? Or was this a tragedy born solely from one woman's twisted pursuit of power and purpose? If you're still trying to process the horror of it all, you're not alone. These are the stories that live under the skin, that force us to question how much we really know about the people closest to us. If this story left you shaken, like this video and subscribe for more true crime breakdowns that uncover the chilling truth behind love, lies, and betrayal.